First of all, beauty and expression is one of the most dynamic industries and resilient to all economic cycles. I only see an acceleration of our quest for expression and slowing down our aging as we move into the future. And this is where biotechnology can help us drive the best outcomes. When you can care for your biology better, you not only get the best out of your biology, but you also get the best out of your expression.
Hey, Karl, how's it going?
Good. How are you, Erum?
I'm fine. Just been busy zipping around Manhattan and the globe, but all good. Seeing all the exciting people that are doing things in biology and getting to meet some of our friends.
Yeah, if it's the first time that you're tuning into this podcast, it is called Grow Everything. And our goal is to share how biotechnology is transforming every single industry. Most people, if they think about biotech at all, they might think about healthcare or medicine, or they might think about agriculture, but there is a lot going on. You, Erum, last week went to the Build Bio conference here in Brooklyn. How about giving a couple line shout out and summary of what you learned?
Yeah, so the Builds Bio event brought together people that are working on commercial lab space and companies that are looking for lab space in New York City. So we know a lot of companies in New York City, especially in Brooklyn, that's where we live. A lot of those people that attended were also speakers, and they shared the work that they're doing across biology, whether it's biomaterials or biofabrication, using different types of microbes to make those things. And really, my big takeaway was that there's a lot of biology happening in New York City at different stages. They also have people from Pratt and FIT, the Fashion Institute of Technology there. So they kind of went from the gamut of being a student, learning to use biology and creating products and imagining them, to creating a startup. So they had Gen Space there, of course. That is one of our community incubators spaces here in Brooklyn. And then they talked about how startups raise money, where as an initial lab space, where do they start out having a small R&D, but when they start building a product, they grow out of that lab space, then they start growing into a small manufacturing plant, then a bigger one. So what does that trajectory look like? They didn't say that in so many words, but that's what I took away from it. We had a party afterwards, and I connected with Andrew Nesser, who was an algae knit at Keel Labs, and we talked about that a bit. Also Sabria, our friend Suzanne Lee from Biofabricate. Again, I could go on. We know so many people here in New York City, but it was great. It's great to know that New York City is a hub for biotech.
Yeah, it's worth also mentioning that just at the top of this, usually we do this at the end, we have been getting some great people sending us emails and commenting on the podcast. If you listen, or regular listener, we'd appreciate it if you leave a review. I'll remind you at the end. But I wanted to give a shout out to Greg, who pointed us in the direction of the Science and Entertainment Exchange, which is an organization to help people in the media, especially in Hollywood, get the science right. Interestingly, he contacted us last week, and then on the weekend, I listened to Science Friday on NPR, and they had the science advisor to Star Trek, and she holds a doctorate in physics. And she talked about all the science that happens on Star Trek and how they keep it accurate, and how sometimes they skip over explaining the science just in the interests of storytelling. Always the storytelling is what's key. The science only matters if you're a scientist or if you really need to dig into the details.
Yeah, that's really cool. That Science and Entertainment Exchange is so fascinating. There are so many different types of shows out there that I think we can learn from, get inspired by. Star Trek is one of those things, but even today, I like to give a shout out to Unstable, even though that's a little bit of a comedy. There were some things where in that show where I'm like, that's really cool science, but some I'm like, I think they're skipping over some things here. You know who's a person who calls out the science a lot in movies? Is our friend Neil deGrasse Tyson. When they made The Martian, Neil deGrasse Tyson, I don't know if it was The Martian or Interstellar, one of those movies, Neil deGrasse Tyson took to Twitter and was like, false, 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 false. This would never happen. So I don't know which one, because one of them, I think he was an advisor on. The other one, he might have just watched and was doing commentary. It is good to have scientists on your side, because the science of things is actually sometimes more fascinating than the science fiction of things, because like, wait, this could actually happen. So definitely something worth us looking into, because we do talk about science. We try to be entertaining. I don't know how entertaining you are, but it would be good to continue that conversation. And thanks, Greg, for putting us in that direction.
You also mentioned that you had watched a Netflix comedy hour with Ronnie Chang.
Yeah.
What was that?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, Ronnie Chang is so hilarious. Well, he's a correspondent on The Daily Show. That's when I first started recognizing his talent. His comedy is just that he's very blunt and a little aggressive, but that's a lot of comedians, I think. And so he had a stand-up special. It must have been like 2022. And he was talking about how during COVID, there was a lot of like COVID deniers or like anti-vaxxers. And he pretty much was saying that in his network, he noticed that the people that were saying that were the D-average students who are asking for scientific evidence. But if they didn't understand science in school, didn't pay attention, how could they make sense of the scientific evidence? So it's okay, here's all the evidence in these scientific papers. Now, do you believe in it? Here's how the DNA goes in, and like basically talking about if he shared the papers with someone who didn't study science in school or didn't really understand it, how would they make sense of it? And he was being very, very mean. And I was like, wow. But as my son says, mommy, be nice. You could be nice. There's a lot of great people out there that maybe did not get good grades in school, but we hope that shows and podcasts like ours spark that interest in people that maybe they did not have the interest in science in the past, but they do now. And clearly all of our listeners do appreciate science, especially biology. So we love that part of things.
Yeah, you are talking about a Netflix special. And we went to go see live comedy this weekend. We saw Ana Fabrega, who is a comedian, and she was one of the co-writers on a show on HBO called Los Espookies, which is in Spanish and
funny.
Takes place in Mexico. But she's a very different kind of comedian in that she basically every minute was either a bit or a joke, and always switching topics very quickly. It was almost like scrolling through multiple TV channels. She would do an impression. Then she would read a bunch of little absurdist short stories. Then she would do a few bits or observations, then repeat that pattern over and over again for an hour. It was very hilarious. We were all laughing a lot, but no science in that set. But let's get into what we're talking about today in the podcast. As we know, every industry is being affected by biotechnology. We have talked in the past about personal care. We had Shara of C16 Biosciences, who are developing a palm oil alternative. And we also have spoken to Jasmina of Archaea, who is using biotechnology to create sustainable ingredients. And today we're super happy to welcome Suveen Sahib, who's a longtime friend and client of Messaging Labs, who is a company that is basically a biotech company disguised as a hair care company that has been extremely successful. And they're very biotech forward. We're very excited about talking to Suveen because he's very smart. He brings a lot of breadth of knowledge, not just to the biotech side of personal care, but also to the anatomy and structure of the human body.
Yeah. Suveen is very, very visionary too. So that's going to be exciting. My intro to the science of hair started back in the 80s when Pantene would have their commercials and they would start talking about hair follicles and how hair looked under the microscope. And I think a lot of people are familiar with hair follicles. They start seeing that because there were these companies that were talking about it. Suveen is going to talk to us on a molecular level about keratin. And keratin is a protein that helps form hairs, nails, and your skin's outer layer, which is called the epidermis. And I'm not going to go any further into that. Suveen is going to open up a whole new world of hair science to us. So let's take it away.
Let's go. Awesome. Hi, Suveen. It's so good to have you with us. You guys have been very successful as a relatively new entrant into the hair care market. I was hoping you could give us a little bit of background on yourself and how you came to start K18 Hair.
Hi, Karl and Erum. Lovely to be here and appreciate the opportunity. Thank you. I was in the tech space for over a decade, and before I worked my way into hair care, thanks to my co-founder, Britta Cox, who's the founder of this iconic hair care called Aquas. And in the conversations, one of the things that really stood out was about how much of a struggle hair care is with most of us across the globe. And more so for anyone who loves expressing the hair. That means you're coloring your hair, perming, straightening your hair. And if you think about it, most of us struggle with the fact that when you color your hair, straighten your hair, perm your hair is more frizzy. It takes more time to dry. It takes more products. And the genesis of all of this lies not just in your habits, but also in an industry that had its roots in cosmetic chemistry, most of which focused on hairstyling and masking the damage. The result is simply that your hair is very needy. It's needy for products, it's needy for your attention literally 24 hours a day while the struggle continues. And that's not how hair care should be for most of us. And when you look into the world of hair through the lens of hair, you realize it's one of the most sophisticated biological composites. So that's the reason why I took to biosciences to get a deeper understanding of the biology of hair, this amazing world of floating amino acid structures and substrates bounded by proteins and the matrix. And to solve that, you could not have a product sitting on top of the hair. You needed to go deep into the hair. And that's where we ended up mapping the entire skeleton, the way your body coats skeleton. And from there, we kind of identified a sequence, optimized it, reassembled it, and made it work for chemically compromised hair to restore very chemically compromised hair to a near state of health and elasticity, which is what healthy, gorgeous hair is all about.
Now, when we talk about K18, we always say you're a biotech company disguised as a hair care company. Is that an accurate way to talk about K18?
Karl, you're spot on that. Think about it this way. Biology does not differentiate between hair, scalp, nails, and skin. As a company, one of our core research areas is keratin-lipid interactions, studying those interactions and working with non-invasive delivery vehicles that would render these interactions stable and bioactive to work with this biologic analog. So if you think about these keratin-lipid interactions, they happen to be the first line of barrier protection, immune responses, and repair of the human biology. They form 100% of the hair and nails and about 95% of the skin. They also are a part of the epithelial cells in our lungs, allowing us to breathe. They render flexibility to our joints. So you can imagine studying these keratin-lipid interactions have applications across hair, skin, pharma, with K18 being an application in the hair.
Yeah, we are biology. That makes a lot of sense. And so now biotechnology is being applied to personal care and beauty products. So can you tell us what the benefits are of using biotechnology compared to traditional cosmetic chemistry? Can you lay that out? And specifically then going into manufacturing, why is biotechnology more beneficial?
And that's a very good point you kind of raise. Think about what beauty seeks out of biotechnology. Everyone out there seeks products that are efficacious, that work for their biology. And together with that, we don't want to compromise on our needs for clean beauty and sustainability. Given all this, when you think about the beauty industry and our sourcing, most of our ingredients are from plants or animal or fossil fuel origin. We cannot grow enough plants to satisfy the needs for our natural ingredients. Livestock agriculture accounts for about 40% of the global emissions. And we all know fossil fuels are simply unsustainable. And this is where biofermentation, biotechnology allows us to produce what exists in nature more efficiently with less of a carbon footprint. We're not talking about synthetic molecules, but we're talking about exactly the same molecule you would find in nature. And not just that molecule as you would find in nature, but be able to synthesize it in a way where it's biocompatible with the human biology so that it works for your skin, for your hair, for your body and your biology as you intended. The second thing is it allows us to optimize the manufacturing of natural ingredients, making their sourcing more sustainable. So we don't need to compromise between efficacy or sustainability. At the end of the day, microorganisms like bacteria and yeast, they're the most abundant natural resource, and they make for the most amazing microfactories. How do we collaborate with them more effectively, more efficiently to produce a non-ending sustainable range of these actives that we seek in the purest form, and then optimize them for biocompatibility so that we can continue to kind of service our beauty and well-being needs in the most optimal manner. And it doesn't stop here. It actually allows you to move a step further to do things which even nature had not intended to be. For example, when you talk about K18, nature never intended that we would go about using chemical processing on a hair and trigger keratin hydrolysis. So your K18 peptide was not just about finding a natural molecule and then applying it to hair. It was actually about taking that molecule, reassembling it, optimizing it to serve the needs that nature had not intended for your hair. It's simply intended to keep your hair healthy. But when you talk about harsh chemistry, you're talking about heat styling and everything else, How do you create that molecule from the nature which is optimized to service that need? And that's where biotechnology checks all the boxes: purity, sustainability, biocompatibility, and innovation that we seek from the beauty industry.
It's very exciting. And I love the way that you succinctly put that, Suveen, in that we can produce all these natural existing molecules, but then we can also really start to create these high performance molecules that work better with our biology. I'm curious, you're working in the hair care industry, an industry that has been very dependent and works with chemistry on a daily basis. But what's it like to introduce biotech or reintroduce biology to an industry that has been so heavily dependent on chemistry? What's the reaction?
The reaction, surprisingly, has been very positive. Cosmetic chemistry has played such an integral role in the beauty industry for generations. And it's delivered great outcomes, whether we're talking about styling, hairstyling, we're talking about color. All of that is best served by cosmetic chemistry. But cosmetic chemistry does not understand biology. For something that does not understand biology, it cannot be a standard for caring for biology. And that's where, when we bring in biotechnology, it can actually help us deliver better styling outcomes. And this is where the entire industry is actually being out there, willing to embrace, wanting to learn how we can understand our biology better so that we can best work with biology, and how it can actually allow us to create a new range of products that are efficacious and biocompatible. Take the case of squalene from Amyris.
Suveen mentions squalene, and that's an oil that gets used in a lot of skincare products as a moisturizer. In fact, squalene helps increase hydration, and it can also help with acne and eczema. The challenge with squalene is that traditionally it was isolated from sharks. So people were killing sharks. They have killed sharks to isolate squalene. A company like Amyris has made it possible to ferment squalene, so you no longer have to kill sharks to produce it. In addition, by not having to kill sharks and having a ready supply of squalene, you can start to modify the molecules slightly and make it more effective when it comes to its moisturizing properties.
This is not about just creating squalene from natural resources. It's about a squalene that does not oxidize very, very quickly when you put it onto the skin. Or talk about the palm oil from C16, which is a more sustainable way of meeting your beauty needs. Or even technology that neutralizes odorant microbes from Arcea. All of these are ultimately driving better outcomes for our community at large.
Thanks for mentioning them. We spoke with Shara of C16 and Jasmina of Arcea. We spoke with them on the podcast. So people want to hear about that, they can go to some of those previous podcasts. But you mentioned having this understanding of biology, and it took about 10 years to develop the K18 peptide, which is the hero of your hair repair mask. But how are you ensuring consumers don't have to wait 10 more years for products that are as radical as a hair repair mask? What's the plan?
And that's a very good question you ask. Think about it this way. Most of the time, when you're doing fundamental research, it's laborious and it's tons of iterations. Take the case of human genome. It took about $3 billion and 13 years to decode it. But once you get to cracking the code, then your ability to really work off the applications is much more rapid. It's in the interdependencies of understanding the protein modeling. That's where you get a better comprehension of the functionality of the protein. So you got to do all of that work before you can really get there. But now in the last couple of years, we kind of seen significant advancement in the synthetic biology tools that were not previously available. Along with that, take AI. Take the case of Halcyon discovery at MIT. It's one of the most powerful antibiotics ever found. And normally it would take tens of years. Now it's about 2 years to capture these intricate associations between molecular structures and their antibacterial properties. And applying the neural networks and supervised learning, we ended up scanning over 100 million compounds that allowed for the discovery of one of the most powerful antibiotics in just 2 years' time. This is where applying synthetic biology tools, sequencing tools, and AI to now rapidly iterate. When we look at the K18 peptide, just for the sequencing data, it took us about 5 years. If I were to able to compress now that 5 years into a year, I can move that much faster in terms of creating new innovation. Just for example, in the next year, we should be launching a molecule that has a strong ability to scan and test millions of these volatile compounds that interact with the olfactory senses in our system. And through that, kind of create an application which has hair, skin, and other beauty applications. We moved pretty fast on that compared to the K18 development.
You have launched a number of products over the last couple of years. You went from the peptide to some very special formulations of shampoos to these chelating products, which to me were astounding because I never knew anything about that. The need for removing hard minerals from hair. And then now I think you've just launched like an oil that contains a peptide. How have those products leveraged biotech? What's the basis of them? Or how do they better interact with human biology? How have you designed them so they better interact with an individual's skin and hair?
Karl, first of all, biotechnology starts with understanding biology. That's key. Biotechnology is basically an expression of manifesting a solution that works with the biology. So take K18. First of all, it was discovered on a computer and not in a formulation lab, and it applied computational techniques using probabilistic structures and sequence analogies that we use in biotech. The starting gene for K18 is a synthesized copy of the human gene, which appears in type 1, type 2 keratin proteins that contain disulfide bonds and glycosylation. That's the starting point. Now, moving forward, peptides are one of the hardest to crack by biofermentation methods. We can create a lot of proteins, we can create a lot of enzymes using these microorganisms, but peptides are hard because the nature of the process is very, very complex. You got these peptide destroying proteases, these enzymes which can destroy the peptide. It's very hard to express it in a bacteria, or the aggregation of these peptides that complicates downstream processing, or sometimes that peptide may devour the host too. So this is one of the most complex areas within biotechnology.
When Suveen talks about glycosylation, he's talking about an enzymatic reaction or a reaction that happens on the molecular level where a sugar molecule gets added to a protein. When Suveen describes downstream processing, what he's referring to is the recovery and purification of products in a fermentation broth or from a plant tissue. So an example would be, let's just say that you brew beer. The beer might contain some impurities. Your downstream processing would be the removal of those impurities. Now back to the interview.
We are one of the few companies in the world that have actually cracked the code on being able to produce bioactive peptides through fermentation technology. So this is not just about the origin in biotechnology, but also the means of production. And that's what we are scaling up over the next 18 months. Moving forward to the shampoos and the oils, the first thing when it came to hair was that you cannot take care of the hair biology unless you have a clean base in terms of the scalp and the hair. And that's not just about how do you create another shampoo and conditioner. The world did not need another shampoo and conditioner. As you understand the biology of the hair, the pH, the impact of water and the minerals and the metals in the water and how they impact the biology of the hair and everything within, we realized that we needed to address this first so that we could create a healthy base for the hair habitat and the ecosystem for K18 to do its job better, and not just only for K18 to do its job better, but for every other product to do their job better. And ultimately, make that job better is not just about transformation of hair, but how do you get to that transformation outcome that you seek out of hair through less stress, less products, less time, and less is more for hair, and that's also good for the planet. And this is where the understanding of the biology, of the biotechnology can allow us to create products that drive better outcomes, but be able to do that in less time and less frustration. And without all of those elaborate routines, then look at the amount of water we waste in rinse out routines for hair or others. We don't need that.
That sounds amazing. And thank you so much for laying out the whole biology and how the process is. You're reinventing the way that we care for hair. And this is very important for hair care professionals. I mean, for their jobs and how they approach taking care of hair. And so I'm curious, what is K18 doing to educate hair care professionals about the benefits of biotechnology and why they should use a product like K18 and the K18 peptide?
First of all, stylists, like any of us, they are most vested in the client's hair. Your stylist is the one who touches their hair the most and probably has the most insight into your hair. And as a stylist, you want to be able to extend your creative canvas, but be able to do it without compromising the integrity of the hair. So, for a stylist to do their job well and delight the client, it's important that they go and extend that canvas without compromising hair. And that's where they are most vested into embracing products that work with the biology, that get them to stretch their canvas with less. And that less also is about every time you do a color service or a straightening service, it's several hours. In a day, you can only do a few services. So that also limits the amount of money you can make out of your time at the salon. So as a stylist, you're more vested into how do I make more money? How do I delight more clients? And how can I do it with a less frustrating experience and I can save more time? And that's where biotechnology helps our stylist community dry more with less in a day. And the fact that all hair is the same at the molecular level, it gets chemically damaged in the same way. And they love the fact that here's this product that they can literally use across every service, whether you're coloring, straightening, perming your service, and you have the confidence that you're protecting your client's hair and yet being able to give them that expression, that personalized manifestation of the expression that they seek without destroying the hair. So as we move forward, stylists are heavily vested into the client's hair. For them, it's about extending their creative expression without really compromising the integrity of the hair. Every time you're doing a chemical service to the salon, it brings in three stresses. It's a lot of chemical stress, it's a lot of heat stress, it's a lot of mechanical stress, all of which compound that damage. So as a stylist, I want to mitigate these stresses and be able to stretch my creative canvas without compromising my hair and also be able to do it in less time and in a more spontaneous fashion. And that's where products like K18 kind of come in and support our stylist community. Because at the end of the day, they only have a few hours to work in a day. Every service takes several hours. So you don't want to add more hours to that service. Also, the fact that all hair at a molecular level is the same, it gets damaged by chemical services the same way. So they love the simplicity of K18. The fact that they can be able to do any service and be able to just do it in 4 minutes and get down to focus on the artistry is what they love. And that gives them an opportunity to make more money. Working with stylists over the last 1 year, we've seen that a stylist can save about 600 to 700 hours in a year using K18. That's a lot more money for a stylist. And that's also a lot more space and time, whether for a personal matters, for personal space, or for stretching your creative canvas.
Yeah, that's incredible. We mentioned that we met with one of your scientists, Megan, if you're listening to this, hello. And she was telling us about not only to help stylists with their job, but also to help them with their health. A lot of the chemical processes can have an effect on the hairstylist's health, maybe from the off-gassing or how they're handling the chemicals. And there's a lot of stories there to be uncovered. They are our frontline workers when we're talking about care. They're putting themselves out on the line. We go see a stylist once every month or quarter for me. I need to go more often. But those stylists are seeing multiple people a day doing all these treatments. So it was very interesting to hear that side of things in terms of what the stylists are going through or personally.
I could not agree more. Think about the kinds of chemicals they're dealing with every day of the year. They shouldn't have to go through that to do the beautiful artistry. If you walk into a nail salon, you can smell the chemicals. It's not good for anyone. Yes, while expression drives it, the key thing is how do we, biotechnology, mitigate those stresses and make the entire process of transformation more fun, more healthy for everyone.
Speaking about stylists and the success that K18 has had, what kind of reaction have you gotten from the market when you talk about the biotech origins? Have they required more convincing? Were they happy to have something different? Was it just the fact that the product worked? Give us some insight into what's the reaction when you say K18 is the product of biotechnology.
At the beginning, it was about the fascination with product efficacy. That's all that mattered. And then coupled with the fact that you had a very simplified routine and the radical speed at which K18 worked, It was a segue to them wanting to learn more about K18. And that took them into the journey of understanding and learning about the biology of the hair, which for many, for the first time when we showed models of internal hair, they'd never seen a model of an internal structure of the hair and where K18 works, how your oxidative services and your alkalinity of the services impacted the structures. So it became a fascinating journey for our stylists to learn about the biology and through biology, why biotech works. As I said previously, the fact that stylists are so deeply vested into hair care and hair expression, for them, it makes as much as for everyone else that the products are healthier for the client's hair, the products are sustainable, and the products work and deliver on the desired outcomes. So for them, the journey of learning biotech has been super engaging. And we love the fact that they're so interested in learning about the science in general and the science of hair in particular.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much for that. So you mentioned a few times, a couple of statements. You mentioned that biotechnology simplifies routines and liberates expression. What does that mean?
Adam, let's kind of first talk about K18. As I mentioned earlier, it's played a key role in simplifying routines for our stylists across the world. Like I was talking about, 600 to 700 hours saving per year allows more room for creativity, pushing the aesthetic boundaries that were not possible before. Take a step back. Let's look at nature. Think of the bird feathers and how they represent all the colors of the rainbow in finite combinations. Biotech gives us access to that style book that nature has given us, unlocking its mixing board. As you kind of see more biotech products being developed, you'll see more creative and a more personal expression than ever before. So you're literally having this access to this full range of what nature produces without destroying the oceans or the forests and creating high performance ingredients that best serve your needs. And none of that we could have done previously. This is where biotech can allow us to not just simplify routines, but take that need for expression and be able to realize that need for expression real time and make it unique to yourself in the most fun and engaging way and without compromising your skin or hair health. Imagine I could have a biotech product on my skin or on my hair. It's got a certain color in the day, and in the evening, when I go to a bar, my hair starts shimmering with a different structure and fits in with my mood of the moment. That's the beauty of biotech.
Whoa, that's awesome. That's amazing. I can't wait for that to come out. Not 10 years, within 10 years?
Much less.
Okay, thank you. Wow.
Yeah, I love, Suveen, how you talk about liberating routines, and yet there's something very practical about being able to save time for hairdressers. So that to me is fascinating. And I think one of the things that I know about the K18 product is if you use it at home, you basically eliminate the use of a conditioner. The only reason people put conditioner on their hair is to kind of smooth it and make it easier to comb. And so right there, it very much speaks to the sustainability part of your mission. I'm curious, just recently you guys did a deal with a company called Hello Biome. And the idea was to better understand the skin microbiome. And microbiome is something that we've talked about several times on this podcast. But what do you expect to come out of that collaboration?
Thank you, Karl, for kind of calling that out. It's all about having a deeper understanding of the biology. And as I said, microbiome is one of the first lines of defense. Just like the keratin structures in the human biology is the other line of defense, both the habitats work together. So when you look at scalp environments, you look at skin or even within the hair follicle as an environment, this is not about how do you create microbiome-friendly products. That's a buzzword. We are looking at how do we drive more investigative research into understanding how the follicular health of the hair and the scalp, how is that impacted by chemical treatments? You have the microbial dysbiosis.
Dysbiosis is simply the disruption to the microbiome, which results in an imbalance in the microbiota, which can change the function or composition of what the microbiome is doing, whether it's metabolic activity or shift in where they're distributed. So when you have a disruption in your microbiome, it can cause different things to happen. And that's what dysbiosis is.
How do you address that? How do the imbalances impact the hair bulk? And how does that in turn impact scalp health? So we want to kind of get a better understanding of all of those. When you have a better understanding of that, together coupled with your understanding of biotechnology, you can then create a whole new line of innovation that work with the biology of your system and also work with the biology of this very crucial habitat that coexists with your system and has got such strong interdependencies with the entire biology. So it's about taking a much deeper and a broader look into biology and then working with that to drive innovation.
That's great. I wanted to ask because you mentioned the microbiome, and we talked to Jasmina of Archaea about the microbiome, and the product that they're making is, we called it a reodorizer. They're shifting the scent from your armpits to make it not smell bad. Have you thought of how to interact with the microbiome in the scalp to create a product? And what kind of microbes live in the scalp?
First of all, I must say I have a huge respect for Jasmine and the work she's doing. Think about all this while we've been creating deodorants. All that they do is the mask the problem. No deodorants has ever solved the problem. And the key thing is, how are those odorant receptors? What are they all about? And how's odor created in the first place? And in the case of Jasmine, the fact that besides the body system, you got this microbiome habitat, which impacts and adds to the odor, which feed on lipid structures with the sweat. And the fact that you can neutralize them now gives you a product that actually does not mask. It's solving it differently. And that's the beauty of biotechnology. We've been looking at, for example, problems like those in a slightly different lens. But that's the bigger opportunity that exists out there to really build up true innovation. This is not, as I said previously, this is not about just creating a product to address microbiome. So we need to first understand the microbiome as a habitat. And when it comes to the scalp, there's very little investigative research that's happened. So for the next, whether it takes us a year or 3 years, we want to really focus on understanding that habitat and its interactions and interdependencies with our hair habits, with our chemical processes and everything else before we can point to a definitive direction as to what that product should be and what it should seek to solve. Unless we don't fully understand it, it's premature to kind of talk about how we're going to solve it and what product it should be. Our focus is not on the product, it's on really understanding the environment.
That's amazing.
I know that you're always looking to the future. And if there was one biotech or scientific advancements that you could accelerate today for the benefit of your customers, what would that be? Because you've seen the market, you know what the challenges are. You're starting to see a lot of the science. I know you're doing a lot more discovery in the microbiome, but what would you see as a scientific advancement?
And that's a great question. Think about straightening treatments. 65% of women in America have curly, coily, or wavy hair. And the number of hair straightening treatments that happen on a daily basis across America is huge. If you've done a hair straightening treatment, it's one of the most harsh treatments on the hair. It's a lot of harsh chemistry, whether it's methylene glycol, you got formalin, all of those are ultimately formaldehyde derivatives. And it's not just about that on your hair and scalp, but combined with that, the extreme stress that you put your hair through, the 3 hours that you spend over there, and then on top of that, you spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars. We all would love to enjoy straightened hair. But if you were able to do that with lesser of that harsh chemistry, with a less of that heat, less of that scalp stress, and less of that mechanical stress on the hair, then I think we all would be a lot more happier with the hair. And that's where biotechnology can help us address that. And this is one of the areas I would love to see how we can accelerate. Us or anyone else can accelerate. Every time I've seen a hair straightening treatment or spoken to someone who's undergone a straightening treatment, it's painful. And I don't think hair care or hair expression should be such a painful experience for you.
Yeah. Megan also mentioned that they call it a keratin treatment.
Yes.
And it's like a very mislabeled term for hair straightening. And like you said, the formaldehyde that they use and they burn it and like off-gassing. And it's, that needs to be accelerated in terms of a new solution to that methodology.
Even just the use of heat to straighten hair, which is something that people do on a daily basis, I just learned is incredibly damaging to hair, to the molecular structure of it. And it only works temporarily. And I'm just curious, Suveen, you're very much a visionary in terms of thinking about biotech and biotech applied to hair. But what do you think is the future of beauty in general when it comes to the applications of biotechnology?
Well, first of all, beauty and expression is one of the most dynamic industries and resilient to all economic cycles. I only see an acceleration of our quest for expression and slowing down our aging as we move into the future. And this is where biotechnology can help us drive best outcomes. When you can care for your biology better, you not only get the best out of your biology, but you also get the best out of your expression.
Suveen is about to talk about some things that are pretty complicated. He's going to talk about the inter and intracellular matrices, which is on the inside and the outside of your skin on a molecular level. He's also talking about lipophilic and hydrophilic systems and vascular structures and the epidermis. This all has to do with the skin and its properties. The epidermis, of course, being the top layer of your skin, vascular structures being all the veins that are found underneath your skin, and they all kind of work together. A lot of cosmetic products only work on the surface of your skin, so they never penetrate in to really be effective. We're going to start to see a lot more biotech being used to make it easier for active compounds to penetrate your skin and be much more effective in terms of keeping you looking young and radiant.
Take the case of skincare. It's such a huge opportunity for biotech applications. As I mentioned previously, skin is about lipid-keratin interactions. And if you look at the genesis of current products in skincare, they're all water formulations. They're water formulations because those actives best dissolve in water. That doesn't mean that it works completely with your skin. And for anything to be really compatible with the human body, your skincare active can only go through your skin system through either the shunt pathways, which are along your hair and hair follicles, or what you're talking about, the intracellular matrix. The intracellular matrix is the most efficient way. But then when you have that, you got to be able to take an active and be able to operate it and make it work with both lipophilic and hydrophilic systems. No actives can do that. And you want to be able to do that without really compromising the barrier of the skin. So this is where biotechnology can help us create products that understand and are able to get into the epidermis system where the vascular structures are and finally be absorbed into it for the purpose of biocompatibility. So it's such early stages for skincare, and it's biotech that can ultimately help us solve our skincare needs, our needs to slow down the aging process in the most efficient and effective way. Finally, when we look at the beauty products that have been traditionally manufactured, they're responsible for a lot of waste. Think about the hundreds of acres of flowers that are grown to extract an oil for a scent. Think of all the paper, glass, metal, and plastic packaging that's landing up in landfills. At least with biotech, it can allow us to shrink that carbon footprint of ingredient manufacturing. And we can that's where we make a start to a more sustainable planet, but also a more sustainable path to meet our beauty and well-being needs, and be able to do this in a manner where products are compatible with our biology and they give us the desired outcomes with less. That's where I see the future.
We've talked a lot about the chemicals that stylists are exposed to on a daily basis, Suveen. But what about on the coloring side? Coloring requires a lot of harsh chemicals. How do you address that from a biotech point of view?
Karl, that's a good question. Color has not really been solved for a long time. The dye molecule continues to dominate the color industry, which is invasive to hair. And with biotechnology, imagine you could have more sustainable color that could last many washes without really severely compromising hair. And this is the opportunity for all of us in the biotechnology space. How do we work with proteins that can interact with the keratin structures and bind to them and be able to give you the color you want without compromising on the integrity of the hair? The nature abounds with examples. You look into the reefs, you look under the water, all around you, you see a world of color. And it's about now harnessing those and making it work for the hair. So we're definitely optimistic about color being addressed in the next 5 years, if not 10 years.
Amazing. I know Erum is a huge fan of this. She talks a lot about the challenges of coloring her hair and wanting to change the color and how the color never lasts long enough. So I think that she'll appreciate any of the developments that we see on the color applications of biotech.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned so beautifully about looking to nature and seeing what's going on in nature. I wonder if are there any animals? I know there's chameleons that they change the color of their skin, but are there any mammals whose hair changes color?
They do. You got nature of reflectant proteins, camouflaging proteins, chromogenic proteins, And it's a part of the whole natural ecosystem. They work a lot with the skin. It's a question of how do you adapt them to meet the hair needs. Because if you look at hair as structure, it's got a cuticle structure which is opaque. So you want to be able to take the molecule into the hair where it binds for a longer period of time and yet is able to absorb the specific wavelength so that it imparts that color to the hair with a structure that's opaque compared to everything else. So yes, it's not one or the other that will solve it. It's a combination of methodologies that we see together helping us address the needs of a hair color that lasts long.
Yeah. Yeah. Then you'll definitely be $1 trillion business once you solve the hair color thing, because that's everyone's doing that. I think that is like one of the top expression systems for beauty and hair is coloring.
Yeah.
So.
Hair color is the growth pillar for the entire hair care industry.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, Suveen, we want to be very mindful of your time. Thank you for taking the time and speaking to our Grow Everything audience. This has been an amazing conversation. We're hoping to run into you again soon in person. Where can people find out more about K18?
Thank you, Karl. Thank you, Erum, for having me here. You can find out more about K18 at k18hair.com, K18hair.com, or else connect with us on our social. So we're all there.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful weekend. Bye-bye.
See you. Bye-bye.
Erum, what did you think of Suveen and that podcast? You've talked to Suveen a few times in the past, but we've never had that kind of conversation with him.
Yeah, it was great to talk to him on that level. It's just super fascinating what's going on in hair. I, in the past, would straighten my hair multiple times a day. It was like my comb.
What?
Yeah. Yeah. And like in college, I mean, everyone, all my friends, I was in a sorority in college, and we would all just straighten our hair nonstop, sometimes with product, sometimes without, because there was the ceramic straighteners, and that made things a little bit easier to go through your hair. Especially like my hair is naturally wavy. On a humid day, it get a little bit wavy or curly, and then I just straighten it and then put a bunch of hairspray in there all up in my hair. So I need to tell my friends about this because they should listen. I think people have gotten away from fully straightening, but there's still a lot of heat tools that they're using. Now, like the big thing is the Revlon roller hair dryer brush. So it can get volume. It's like a way of blowing out your hair and brushing at the same time after you take a shower. It does dry your hair pretty fast, but no one's thinking about kind of the long-term effects when all of a sudden your hair starts getting fragile and breaking and wondering why, going at it from all sides with all of the chemicals and the heat. So thank you, Suveen, for sharing the science behind it. I think when you start understanding the science at that level, it gives you the information to make different decisions.
Yeah, hair straightening is extremely bad for your hair, especially if you are straightening your hair with heat when your hair is wet, because what you're doing is you're going to force water molecules under the cuticle. And when they're under the cuticle and exposed to heat, it creates steam and it lifts the cuticle up, exposing the interior of your hair, meaning the cortex, which is where the keratin protein is. So don't straighten your hair if it's wet. It's very bad for you. The other thing that
Karl, you have been working with K18 for quite some time. You are very knowledgeable in hair care.
I feel like I know enough to get in trouble. I'm in no way a hair expert. We rely heavily on Megan Schlapp, who is the scientist on the K18 team when we're getting deep into the science of hair. And Megan is always sending us primary sources, so research papers. But one of the things that Suveen brought up that I think many people neglect is the impact of chemical services on the health of stylists and colorists. I mean, these are the people who are dyeing hair day in, day out. They're straightening hair, they're relaxing hair, they're perming hair. And that has real health effects on these people. In addition, what was interesting was Suveen kept bringing up sustainability and simplifying routines. We don't really think about the amount of water that goes into not just rinsing products off hair, but also the amount of water that is used to produce those products. I think that one of the ways that biotech changes personal care products is there's going to be less of them, and you need less of them to be effective.
That would be amazing. I know that just people not people, I'm just going to say myself, I spend a lot of time on my hair. It's long. I know I need to get a cut. I mentioned that in the show that I do spend some time on my hair, but if you can simplify it so I can just be in and out. So there's two things I need. One product to cleanse my scalp and make sure my hair is soft while I cleanse the scalp. Because when I cleanse the scalp with a shampoo, my hair still gets tangled. So then I use a conditioner to detangle it. That's my experience. And then I have to dry the hair. My husband's always like, you look great with curly hair. Let it air dry. But I'm like, I don't know. I look like I'm more freewheeling with curly hair. I don't know. Not to say anything.
But you are freewheeling. What's wrong with you?
But I just feel like I look more put together with straight hair, or at least like straightish hair. Anyway, I'm digressing. I'm always fascinated about what the future of hair looks like, or hair products look like with biotech. Because you and I spend a lot of time visioneering different products. What do you think? What do you think some of these hair care products could look like now that you've been working with K18 and you know a lot about synthetic biology?
Bean spent a lot of time talking about the color of hair, which is complicated. The way hair gets colored now is you typically bleach the hell out of it so that you strip out the melanin. I do know that bleaching your hair is extremely harsh on your hair. And what you're doing is not only stripping the color out, but you're opening it up so that the color molecules can go into your hair. So I think that's going to be a super interesting biotech application. I think Suveen also talked about how we leverage the microbiome, that is all the microbes and microorganisms that live on our skin and scalp, and how do we keep them healthy? Because one thing that we know too is that like when you overwash your hair, you're stripping away all the natural oils that your body produces, and which is why conditioner exists. So I think fewer products that you have to use less of, products that keep you healthy. I think that there's going to be some really interesting developments on the longevity side of the world that will change skincare routines and make us look younger longer. I think we've seen that with, if you watch any of Brian Johnson's videos on YouTube, he has a crazy skincare routine that he does every night. I think on the really wild side of things, making it easier for people to grow hair. I've always thought that pangolin mohawks would be cool. Pangolins are an endangered species that has these very thick keratin scales. They are mammals, but they grow scales. I think a pangolin mohawk would be very cool. Not for me.
For a person?
Yeah, for a person.
So you're saying a person, to have them grow scales on their head?
Yeah, growing scales or growing the hair into a pangolin-shaped scale.
Damn, that's so crazy. I'm sure there are people that are like, if that exists, sign me up. Wow. Yeah. Okay. That's definitely a stretch of the imagination. That's why I love you, Karl. It's great.
The other thing that I think it's worth pointing out, and we mentioned it at the beginning of the podcast, that we've interviewed Jasmina of Archaea, we've interviewed Shara of C16, and we're very interested in meeting with and talking to other beauty and personal care brands. And Suveen does a good job of lifting everybody up. I really admire him for that. He complements these other companies. And I think it's important for people to understand that not one company or one person is going to solve all these challenges. They're very complicated. So we need, as I've said before, every solution everywhere all at once. So get out there and start your beauty product company today so that you can help a lot of people who need your help.
Yeah, absolutely. We should do like an advertisement that has that statement, but also plays on the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Yeah.
That would be funny if we could do something like that. Yeah. So, and then I know I need to get my hair cut. I'm going to go. Oh, so I was saying that I'll go to Spoke and Wheel, which, you know, they actually spoke at Biofabricate, and they hold a lot of K18 products and they put it front and center in their services. But those prices are a bit extravagant side. I know New York City is a city of
extreme wealth
and luxury. Thank you, Karl, for offering to pay for it, but I guess he did not know the price.
Yes,
but
that is out of our budget, Erum.
For hair care budget. I'm just going to get a whole bunch of K18 and just, I know it's a 4-minute hair mask, but I'm just going to do a lot of extra credit and just see what happens. Maybe just times out of 4 minutes. I'm sure that's the case, but I think that's all I'll need. And I'll just buy $1,000 worth of K18 hair.
That's a lot of K18. So we are recording this a week before traveling to San Francisco, actually to Oakland, to go to the Synbiobeta conference. It is the premier synthetic biology conference in the world. And we're really looking forward to going there. If you're a listener and you're there, make sure you find us and say hello. We are going to be looking for new people to interview. We've got a nice series of people that we're interviewing over the next couple of weeks. We've got some very exciting episodes coming up. We may do an episode from Synbiobeta, maybe a short one, and make sure you come over and say hi to us.
Yeah. This is my first in Biobeta. And I saw the agenda and what's going on. They have different tracks. This is definitely a top-notch conference just by looking at the materials and the agenda. Not only because you are speaking 3 times at the conference, Karl, but so we know it's super professional. I've easily been to over 50 conferences in my lifetime and just thousands and thousands of events. So I would say for any first-time goers of any conference, or it's like if you've been to a conference and like there was like no ROI, but there are some key tips. And I'm just going to run down a few things. And Karl kind of gave an idea of what that is. It's like when you go to a conference, you're really just going to meet people. If you go there to sell stuff, you're already lost because no one's there to buy anything, right? They're there to meet people. So your goal is just to say hi and find out what other people are interested in, because once you show that you're interested in someone else, they will show interest in you. And that's how you create a relationship. So no one cares about you if you don't care about them. That's kind of the big thing.
I would add one other thing. Yes, it's absolutely about the people, but I think there's going to be so many ideas that get thrown at us. We'll have months of podcast content. I definitely go for the people. I feel like we have a really nice community at Synbiobeta. A lot of us know each other. One of my goals this time is to really try to connect with people who have been going for a long time, but who I have not really met or gotten to know over the years. Keep a notebook, keep your laptop, take notes. There's going to be a lot of good ideas. And please do find us. The entire messaging lab team will be at Synbiobeta, and we're looking forward to meeting you.
Yeah, absolutely. But we're listening to this podcast and we do have one ask of you. We know we have lots of asks usually, but the one ask, can you please review us on Apple Podcasts? That's it. We have such great guests and people need to know what they are doing so that they can be inspired to either join those companies or start them or start thinking about how biology is a tool to create a sustainable future. So just reviewing us on Apple Podcasts would do us a solid. That is all. That is what I'm asking for.
All right. I think then that's the pod. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.